August 22nd, 2025, South China Sea. A Chinese vessel holds position 50 meters from a grounded ship. 50 meters. No closer, no farther. This isn't about the ship. It's about who controls access without firing a shot. The BRP Sierra Madre hasn't moved since 1999. It can't. The hull is rusted through in places. The engines are dead. A small detachment of Filipino Marines lives inside. 2 days earlier, the Armed Forces of the Philippines released a count. 5 Coast Guard vessels, 11 fast boats, 9 militia ships, a helicopter, a drone. Some of the fast boats had been upgraded. Mounted weapons, heavy crew-served weapons. They weren't circling. They were stationed inside the shoal. No shots were fired, no boarding occurred. But 2 months before this, something else happened. 8 Filipino sailors were injured. 1 lost a finger. 7 rifles were confiscated. Hulls were punctured with knives. Communications equipment was smashed. And when the Philippines requested to evacuate their wounded, China agreed. On one condition: no construction materials. The Sierra Madre is falling apart. And now there's a question that no one has answered. What keeps it standing long enough to matter? Some people call it a ship. Others call it something else. To understand what's happening, you need to understand the ship. The BRP Sierra Madre is a World War II-era vessel. The Philippines ran it aground on Second Thomas Shoal in 1999. Deliberately, a sovereignty marker made of rust and stubbornness. It has no engines, no weapon systems, no way to leave. A small garrison of Marines rotates through. They sleep inside the hull. They depend entirely on resupply boats for food, water, medicine, and materials to keep the ship from collapsing into the reef. Every few weeks, those boats make the journey. And every few weeks, China's waiting. February 6, 2023, a Chinese Coast Guard vessel, CCG-5205, tracks a Philippine resupply ship called the BRP Malapascua. No collision, no water cannon. Instead, a green laser, military grade, aimed directly at the bridge. The crew reported temporary blindness. 6 months later, August 5th, a different resupply mission. This time, water cannons. The BRP Malabrigo and a civilian supply boat take direct hits. First documented use at Second Thomas Shoal. October 6th, a PLAY-8Q surveillance aircraft appears overhead. A Chinese frigate closes to within half a nautical mile of a resupply ship. Closest approach on record. At the time, October 22nd, 2 collisions in a single day. CCG vessel 5203 rams a Philippine supply boat. A militia vessel bumps a Coast Guard escort. No casualties, no gunfire. This was still the testing phase. What followed would not be, but a pattern is forming: laser, water cannon, aircraft, close approach, contact. Each step slightly further than the last, each one just below the threshold of armed response. Beyond the horizon, U.S. carrier strike groups continued routine Pacific rotations, present but uninvolved. Every one of these steps reduced the room for error. March 5, 2024, Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels intercept a Philippine resupply convoy. Aggressive harassment, blocking maneuvers, the supplies don't get through. March 25th, another mission, this time water cannons again. The result? Significant damage to a Philippine supply ship. Injuries to Filipino personnel. 2 governments, 2 versions. Canada called it a threat to regional stability. China called it reasonable, lawful, and provoked by the Philippines. The resupply missions continued. So did the interceptions. June 17, 2024. Everything before this had been preparation. This is the day the pattern breaks. A Philippine Navy rigid-hull inflatable boat approaches Second Thomas Shoal. Standard resupply run, small craft, unarmed crew. The China Coast Guard deploys 8 vessels. They ram the Philippine boats repeatedly. They try to block the path. And then something new. Chinese personnel board the Philippine vessel. They carry knives, axes. They smash the communications equipment. They puncture the hull. They take 7 firearms from the Filipino crew. They physically assault the Marines on board. 8 Filipino personnel are injured. One of them loses a finger. Rocks are thrown at Filipino troops moored near the Sierra Madre. The Armed Forces of the Philippines calls it hijacking, piracy. China's government acknowledges the boarding. They call it an inspection, the first conducted on a Philippine vessel. Whether that was enforcement or escalation depends on who you ask. But the operation doesn't end with violence. It ends with a negotiation. The Philippines request permission to evacuate the wounded. China agrees, on one condition: the rescue vessels may retrieve the injured, but they may not carry construction materials. For the first time, China was setting the terms of access to the outpost. The timeline: 10 a.m., Philippine Coast Guard notified of casualties. 12 o'clock noon, damaged boats retrieved. 10:30 p.m., rescue attempt for injured personnel. 12 and a half hours. China controlled the terms the entire time. No shots fired, no formal blockade declared. But the message was clear. Access to the Sierra Madre is no longer automatic. It's conditional, and the conditions are set by Beijing. At this point, the question was no longer presence, it was control. 2 months after the boarding, the situation at Second Thomas Shoal changes again. Not in type, in scale. August 20th, 2025. The Armed Forces of the Philippines releases an observation report. 5 China Coast Guard vessels, 11 fast boats, 9 maritime militia vessels, 1 helicopter, 1 surveillance drone, and something else. Some of the fast boats have been upgraded. The AFP describes them as carrying mounted weapons. Heavy crew-served weapons, rigid hull inflatable boats are deployed inside the shoal, not outside. Inside, water cannon drills are observed, maneuvering exercises, coordinated movement. This is not a response force. This is a permanent presence. 2 days later, Philippine Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro makes a statement. He calls Chinese activity near Second Thomas Shoal a matter not only of concern, but of condemnation. Then he provides a detail. One of China's boats came within 50 meters of the Sierra Madre. 50 meters. In October 2023, a Chinese frigate closed to half a nautical mile. That was the closest approach on record. Half a nautical mile is 926 meters. Now the distance is 50. The Sierra Madre is 100 meters long. A Chinese vessel is holding position half a ship length away. No boarding, no collision, just presence. 50 meters is either close or it isn't. There's no middle ground. 11 days earlier, a different location, same pattern. Near Scarborough Shoal, a Philippine Coast Guard vessel called the BRP Sierra is conducting operations. A Chinese Coast Guard ship, CCG 3104, moves to intercept. It fires a water cannon. Then something goes wrong. A second Chinese vessel is also pursuing. The 2 Chinese ships collide with each other. CCG 3104 sustains damage. The forecastle crumples inward. Approximately 10 meters of the bow is crushed. The vessel is rendered unseaworthy. The BRP Sierra is undamaged. No Filipino vessel made contact. China's own ships disabled each other. But the operation continued. August 31st, 5th ramming incident reported, this time near Sabina Shoal. October 11th, a Chinese militia boat sideswipes a Philippine fisheries vessel off Titu Island. November 8th, the Philippines passes a new maritime law defining sea routes and zones. Beijing formally protests. December 2025, another collision at Second Thomas Shoal. Manila accuses the Chinese Coast Guard of reckless actions. Beijing claims the Philippine vessels invaded. The language is familiar now, and so is the sequence: ramming, blocking, water cannons, accusations. But something is different. The fast boats have weapons, the distance is 50 meters, and the pattern no longer resets, it compresses. At that point, some analysts stopped calling this deterrence at all. The window for miscalculation was shrinking with every incident. December 26, 2025. The USS Abraham Lincoln enters the South China Sea. Nimitz-class carrier, 3 guided missile destroyers, carrier Air Wing 3. By January 5th, live-fire exercises begin. F-35 sea flight operations, failing systems firing from the deck. January 8th, the drills continue. 1 week earlier, China ran its own exercises. Justice Mission 2025. Naval drills encircling Taiwan. December 29th and 30th. 2 carrier-capable forces, different operations, overlapping waters. Neither acknowledges the other. Both are present. The Sierra Madre is still grounded. The garrison is still inside. Armed fast boats remain stationed in the shoal. The distance is still 50 meters. China has not fired a shot. No blockade declared, no seizure attempted. But since June 2024, Beijing has decided what supplies reach the ship, when the wounded leave, what materials are allowed. The Philippines controls the vessel. China controls everything around it. The hull is older now than it was designed to last. Rust doesn't wait for diplomacy. Neither does pressure. At some point, the Sierra Madre will no longer be habitable. The Marines will leave. Sovereignty will be settled not by treaty or combat, but by structural failure, unless something changes. A resupply that doesn't ask permission, an escort that doesn't turn back, a response that isn't negotiation, or a vessel at 50 meters that decides to close the gap. There is a carrier strike group in the South China Sea right now. Armed fast boats inside Second Thomas Shoal right now. A rusting ship with a handful of Marines who haven't been resupplied on schedule for months. Everyone is watching. No one has blinked. The question isn't whether this becomes a crisis. It's whether it already is, and no one has named it.